Okay. Okay, so we'll get started here. Almost everyone online this time and a couple in class here. So the week 11 content, we see here on the site in Sakai, and our week 11 folder. Here's our Zoom link, of course. We'll have that every week going forward. We were going to have number phobic presentation. That individual can't come tonight. So we'll have 2 number phobic presentations. That's chapters 8 and 9. Will be next week. And so what we'll cover tonight will be chapter 5, which talks about business plan. And there'll be a little mini research paper that we'll talk about at the end of lecture. And there'll be a small project that'll also be talked about at the end of lecture. And I actually have the handouts. The handouts that we distributed to everybody was, the PowerPoint slide handout. There's also a handout showing the business plan, mini research paper, one with the information for the project. And there's also another handout that I will post up to Sakai pretty. Let me just go ahead and do that. And that is content from the book that is the contents of a typical business plan, and it laid out in a little bit more of a user-friendly format than what I had on the slides. So let me see if I can, hopefully I've got, I believe I have that in my OneDrive. Nope. There it is. So I'm going to upload that right now. So this business plan contents is another handout in addition to the PowerPoint slides. Oh, we got 2. All right. Okay, so that's our handouts, PowerPoint slides, the outline of a business plan, information on the project, and information on the paper. So that being the case, we'll go right into it here. And our material for the week then is the business plan, which is chapter 5. I always know an early chapter in the book because I have to stick a rubber band on the lower half of my book so it doesn't keep flopping over. So we get into at the very beginning of the chapter, and just talk about what is a business plan. Really the plan of action for getting a business started. Generally part of the startup process where you do anything business-wise. You should at least have a startup business plan. We'll talk about the different kinds. And one of the different kinds is a startup business plan. So some of the factors to consider are going to be, not only your initial assets, both tangible and intangible, but things such as management, finding the right management team, securing financing, whether that be through debt financing or equity or a mixture of both. But the business plan puts all of that information together. It actually helps you sell the idea of the business to potential investors or creditors. The business plan, what that is This would be page 64 of the text. It's a written document, presents basically the entire business in detail, from how the business got its ideas, the details on the management team, got descriptions of products, descriptions of the market in depth, details on the production process. You might have a floor plan of production facilities. Marking should be marketing and sales plan. Another factor of the business plan is projected financial statements, which coincidentally is the material for next week's chapter 9. We're talking about pro forma financial statements. So financial projections, funding, those kind of things are all part of a business plan. There is a good link on the Small Business Administration's website, and they have an area called the SBA Business Guide. I actually brought it up on the web here, and there is an area where you can, there's information about planning a business, launching, managing, and growing. And in the planning section, the second item down, if you scroll over the drop-down list here, is writing a business plan. And SBA actually has some information about business plans, what kind of format works for you. And they give a couple of examples. So they give a good condensed explanation about business plans right here. So I gave you both the link to that SBA business guide, and the slide before gives you the link that takes you directly to the page on business plans. I'm actually going to talk about a couple of the ones that are given. So the Small Business Administration presents something the textbook does not, and that's something called a lean business plan. And I have an example right here, and I'll put these up on Sakai as well. This is an example of a lean business plan, and it's very, very, very short. Just one page, and just very general, doesn't go into any specifics whatsoever. So just tells you what the business is, what problem the business hopes to address for consumers, what is their solution, what market is being targeted, who is the competition, where are they going to make their money, how they're going to market the products, what kind of expenses they're going to cover, and management and milestones. So some of the items that are typically covered by a longer business plan, this is just in super condensed format. So it's kind of more of a pamphlet approach than what we're going to see in the chapter here. Excuse me. So generally, the Small Business Administration does make the point of admitting that this approach is really only useful for your businesses that are very, very simple. Maybe your sole proprietorships that maybe aren't looking for any financing or very limited financing, possibly through just banks. Okay. So for very small businesses, simple businesses, or as a starting point, just a small synopsis that gets you started on writing your business plan. So that was the lean business plan. Chapter, actually talk on the top of 65 about different types of business plans other than The one we're going to be talking about really is the business finance, or sorry, it's actually going to be the business plan itself. So really not one that's covered. These would be additional plans. Excuse me. So you could have an equity financing plan, debt financing, corporate. These are all different financial plans and to whom they're typically submitted. What we're going to get into is it's going to be a general business plan. And that's section 5.2, and that's where we're going to spend the majority of our time in this chapter. And some businesses, if you are getting a bank loan, you may be not only asked to present a business plan, but also a personal financial plan. It's possible. So 3 types of business plans. The one we're going to be talking about is really point 2, which is the working business plan. You can have a smaller version of a business plan to get started. That's your startup plan. There's one of those presented on the SBA site as well. And that is, I happened to load it before we started. And that was this We Can Do It Consulting business plan. So this is more of the typical what the textbook's talking about, but in a more abbreviated fashion than what the textbook is talking about. Their business plan is usually about 40 pages long. This is 8, including the title page. So just a general startup plan by the owner. Starts with an executive summary. In the textbook, there's actually a title of contents also being presented before the executive summary. There's an index. There's additional forms at the end, including projections. But this one gives you a lot of what's typically presented in a plan. Things such as what is the product, or in this case, we have a consulting business, so we have a service being presented. So we have a service being offered. Who's the service being offered to? Consulting services, primarily to business owners, HR directors, program managers, etc. And they do mention specifically what their consulting is focusing on. And it is typically more in the human resources realm. So that is the customer, that is their target audience, is companies who need consulting from a human resources perspective. So future of the company is also discussed. Why is this company feasible? Because consulting is the way things are going. Rather than having employees on staff, a lot of corporations and larger businesses are going to, consulting firms where they don't have to pay all the employment taxes and the benefits as they would normally if they had these individuals as employees rather than as independent contractors. So we get a company description with a mission statement. Who are the principals involved in the business? And what is the legal structure? We have this business is not only a corporation, it's an S corporation. And told you exactly where it was incorporated. For most states, that information is public. So state of Illinois, you can go on to the Illinois Secretary of State's office, is who governs corporations and LLCs. And you can actually go onto the Secretary of State site and do a corporate or LLC search. And you can tell whether or not that corporation's active, who the individuals are, that are the principals, and what their very general information is. So whether you have an active corp or one that's been dissolved. So this business is a legal structure. They did some market research. Talked a little bit about their industry, a little about their ideal, who their customer is, which was touched upon a little bit back in the description. Excuse me. So advantages of the company to its customers. And yes, we have a service rather than a product. And basically our people are our product. And that's true of any service industry. So in the service industry, you basically have to say how you're unique from your competition. And this business emphasizes the fact that they're flexible, fast, and can provide expert advice and work on short deadlines. So they're pretty much available very, very quickly. And these are some of the things that they bring to the table. Product managers are certified. They ensure that the team members use a specific reporting process. Some of the things that are offered are public speaking training for the company's consultants. They vow to develop close relationships with their subcontractors. And staff members must be properly educated. The goal there is 20% having master's degrees or above. And they do mention the fact they are a virtual company. They do not have a physical location. So individuals are working about the way we are right now. Kind of funny that this plan was written back in 2016. And that's the way things are now 4 years later. Probably the way we're going to see a lot of businesses go forward. So regulations, what kind of regulations are the company, do the company have to adhere to? Have to meet federal and state regulations regarding business consulting. There might be licensure requirements that are handed down by the state. They would have to maintain those requirements as well. Not sure if they have anything like accounting does. We have peer review that we need to complete every licensing cycle, 3 years. Okay. So then we describe a little bit about their service line. These are the services they provide. Pricing structure, what's your price going to be? Actually have it laid out, hourly rates based on the type of, based on the individual and the type of service being provided. What do they expect the product life cycle to be? Ready now, hopefully life of perpetual life. And what kind of patents or trademarks or anything intangible do they hold in terms of intellectual property rights? They have gone out and trademarked their name. And also, they filed for some patent work and trademarked the logo. Hasn't been completed yet. They said that they have filed for protection, and they've also registered their domain name and have reserved social media accounts for future use and the like. Excuse me. a little bit more about some of the research they're going to be doing, their marketing and sales strategy, how do they plan to grow, how do they plan to communicate with the customer. And that's about it. A typical business plan would go a little more in depth than this, would go into specifically who are our managers, what's their background, maybe provide their resumes in the index or after the index. So that is a good example of a startup business plan. It's a good place to get started. So that owner could present that plan to potential investors, to potential lenders in hopes of securing financing. A lot of lenders do want to see that kind of work nowadays. Do want to see that you have a legitimate idea, that you've put a lot of thought into. And as business lenders, of course, the main thing they want to get is they want to get their money back plus interest. So that's a good illustration of a startup business plan. Again, that came right off of the Small Business Administration's site about business plan. And these were the example. That was Rebecca's plan. Andrew's plan was the lean startup format. Okay. So working business plan is what we'll talk about pretty much in depth. And then there's a plan that's called the internal. So what we talked about, there was a startup business plan. If you click on the hyperlink, that'll take you to the document that I just showed you, but I will upload those to Sakai here after class. So very abbreviated version. The purpose is basically to propose the idea, test flexibility or feasibility, excuse me, and propose that idea to lenders and investors. And that's exactly what the We Can Do It consulting company did. So roughly 10 pages in length. Theirs was 8. So they did a pretty good job there. And you can take that 10 pages and add a lot more detail to get to the full plan. And one thing, the full plan includes that that startup plan did not. Typically, you do have some sort of financial projections. That was not done in the case of the consulting company. But for a startup plan, you want to keep your projections about 1 year in length, possibly 2. And they're basically guesstimates at this point in time. Before you started up the business, you want to be hopeful, but not unrealistically so. Don't want to say I'm going to make $3 million in revenue the first year and come up with 10% of that. That doesn't look too good. So if anything, shoot low and hope for better. So the working business plan, that's what we're going to talk about for it's really what all of section 5.2 is about, and most of the remaining sections of the chapter. Excuse me, my knee's popping. So generally 20 to 40 pages. I think it's long. And it is more detailed throughout. The sections that we saw in the consulting business plan, they would be expanded. We would have that detail with our principal and owner and, our main service providers, a little bit about their background, possibly their resumes in the back of the plan. So we do have that thorough description, and I'll show you one here in a little bit that I actually found online today. It was kind of an interesting company that doesn't appear to ever have gotten off the ground. It was a company that was trying to bring like technology, kitchen technology into an app, like appliances with the option of being turned on remotely via your phone. Did a search for that company and it does not appear to exist anymore. But they had a good plan, and theirs was a lot more detailed than the one we just saw. So, and there was projected financial statements in a typical working business plan are for more longer term, for more like 3 to 5 years versus just 1 or 2. And the contents of the plan of a general business plan. Oh, we got to talk about internal plans first, excuse me. So internal plans, just like a business plan, but made for more internal use. So you may see parts of it that are eliminated that would typically be presented, such as, the description of the company, the history of the company, the vision. We can trim those parts. But generally where this is seen is if you're, revamping the organization entirely, launching a new product or a new service, expanding the business, downsizing the business. It's a document that's meant for internal use. So it doesn't have to include all of the bells and whistles of a general business plan. I likened it to managerial accounting versus financial accounting. Managerial is more for internal use, financial is more for external use. So your internal business plan is less structured than is the typical business plan itself. And the financial projections you see in an internal plan may just be if you're offering a new product, it may be projections that only pertain to the new product, not to the entity as a whole. Okay. So internal, the benefits of having a business plan, whichever type you have, if it's the startup, if it's the general plan, or the internal, or all three. You've got a roadmap for performance, roadmap for the future, goals. Serves as a way of setting goals and also lays out how those goals are going to be achieved. So it's a good way to monitor performance. And say you set those goals too high, you can adjust that business plan to reflect reality. I mentioned before the consulting company. If they shot too high on revenues, they can go back to their business plan after a year of actual results or so, go back into that business plan and reflect reality with it. And reflect reality with their financial forecasts as well. So that business plan isn't, we say it's not a static document, is what the textbook says. It is basically a living, breathing document that gets changed frequently. Should at least be revisited once a year. Okay. So the external business or benefits of that business plan, not only roadmap for performance from the outside perspective, but as a document used to sell that business to the investors and or the lenders. This is why you should invest in this business. I try to paint a rosy, somewhat of a rosy picture and not bring the mood down too much. But yeah, you want to be realistic as well. So, why have a business plan? Going to attract business partners, possibly attract investors. You may, as trying to secure financing, you may need this as a requirement. Entirely possible. Lender might say, we won't loan you anything without a business plan. But importantly, it serves as a guideline. So gives you something to refer to and something to assist you in the forming and startup stages of the business and during the operation stages. So forming and startup stages, hopefully you're, as a business owner, well, seeking the expertise of others. You might be, seeking the expertise of an attorney for some things, possibly a consultant also, and accountants, maybe a marketing consultant, a human resources consultant, somebody like that you can actually show the business plan to and bounce ideas off of. And they might say, well, this isn't going to work. Maybe you should try this. And so that's another reason why this is not a static document. It does do a lot of changing, especially early on. Okay, so the contents of the plan did not translate so well to a PowerPoint slide, so that's why I presented it in a Word document. It is a little bit, reads a little easier that way. And it's also exactly the same content as what's on page 66 of the book. That's exactly where I got it from. So you're going to start off with a title page. Second is a confidentiality statement, which is optional. Thirdly is table of contents. And after the table of contents, you have an executive summary, a vision statement, mission statement, and something called an elevator pitch. We'll talk about here in a minute. Little description of the business in terms of its background, the type of product or service it's trying to sell, the market that business is trying to sell that product or service to, and specifically regarding the market, we get into who is the ideal consumer, what consumer are we targeting, what kind of suppliers are we going to use, and or service providers. Who's our competition? What kind of rules and regulations does our business need to meet? What kind of business impact are we looking to have? What kind of risk factors are involved? And then there's also some functional plans that are presented. And that's basically where this plan differs from that startup plan. You see more information given in this area. You're going to have an operational plan, which states how the operations are going to work. Management plan, you might have some management diagrams in here. A little bit of a description and narrative on the management flow. There could be some scheduling and some milestones presented. And we'll talk about those too. Marketing plan is very important, as is the financial plan. And specifically for the financial plan, what's presented is our sources of funding or our desired sources of funding, projected financial statements in terms of 2, 5, and 6, which are cash flow, profit and loss, and balance sheet. Discussion about the capital assets that will be utilized, and probably things about the initial cost of those assets, might get into a discussion of depreciation methods utilized. And there'd be a discussion of break-even, be a break-even analysis that should be presented as well. Excuse me. And I think too, in this financial plan, the textbook didn't talk about it, but I think there should be some discussion before presenting any of that information, especially the budgeted financial statements, of what method of accounting is going to be used. And define that method of accounting. Going to use cash basis of accounting. Cash basis of accounting means this. Accrual basis means this. So, and then after we have the financial plan, we have our appendix. After our appendix, generally, we might have some, indices, and that might be area 2 where things like, if the company has any patents, maybe there's evidence of the patent that's presented here. Any business licenses may be presented here. Incorporation paperwork. So this document can get bulky pretty quickly. Okay. So what's going to be on the title page of the plan? Just the title of the project, title of the business, the name of the business, the logo if there is one, web address if you have one, owner information to whom the plan's being submitted, and the date of the plan being submitted. So confidentiality agreement, 67, this is in the middle of 67. It's optional, but never a bad idea. Kind of the concept of covering your hiney. So, this good plan is gonna, if you have a good plan, it's gonna reveal some stuff. Some stuff you don't want stolen. So, it's not a bad idea to put a confidentiality agreement within your plan. Basically says, and this is from a couple of authors called Leach and Melcher. If I pronounced that right, I'm sure I didn't. But the wording is that the business plan contains information that the firm considers proprietary. We created it. Basically, it's our intellectual property, and we have the right to it. So don't steal it. It's basically the gist. This is our property, and please agree to not poach our property. You're going to keep this confidential, please. Please and thank you. So our consultant didn't put that confidentiality statement within her plan. She didn't give that much away in her plan, so she could get away with it. If you were doing something that had some trade secrets involved, yes, you should put a confidentiality statement in there. So a table of contents should be presented. Usually you write this last. Well, actually, you review it last. The next item is what you write last, and that's the executive summary. So when you're in the review stage of your plan, review the table of contents, the very last thing you do. Is then you make sure you've caught everything that's been added and that it's all included in your table of contents. Excuse me. Executive summary. Yeah, this is your last item written. Basically, this is going to summarize the plan's contents in roughly 2 to 3 pages. So you don't know what to summarize until you've written the whole plan. Write the plan first, then do the executive summary. Excuse me. So what this should do, and it is the most crucial section of the plan, because this is going to be the first thing that lenders or investors are going to see that's going to have any meat to it. I mean, before this, you had a title page, you had a boilerplate confidentiality statement, and you had a table of contents that people probably just zipped through visually, and that was it. Executive summary is what it's gonna be their first impression. So that's why it's most crucial. So it should explain not only that business idea, how it's going to be marketed, how the operations are going to be run, the management, the finances, what kind of impact the project is going to have. It should have very clear and concise wording and utilize either bullet points or narrative style, maybe even both. And we'll look at a pretty decent business plan here in a second, as we talk about a few other things. So next item is presented, and this would start on the bottom of 68, top of 69. Talk about vision statement, mission statements, and elevator pitches. So specifically the vision statement, where do we want to go in the future? Microsoft had a good one. And their vision statement was just very short, very sweet, to the point. Their vision was a computer with Microsoft software on every desk. Bingo. That was it. That was pretty that was pretty bold thinking for back in the late 70s, early 80s, when they were getting started. But eventually that's what happened. So kudos to them for making it happen. So it should have some enthusiasm, and Microsoft's statement definitely does. And spells out your ultimate goal in some sort of a slogan, tagline, or mantra. Heck yes, this could be a good mantra. So it summarizes what the company is about and what it would ultimately like to achieve. Slam dunk right there. Microsoft did the dang thing. And probably, I would guess, close to 100% of us have some sort of Microsoft software on our computers. I know I do. Not only operating system, but I use the entire Office suite and have for years. I have my entire working career. And I'm not the only one, by any means. So mission statement is going to be very simple and direct, and more takes that vision statement and actually kind of expands upon it. So how are we going to turn these ideas into reality? So translating that vision into feasible goals, and how we're going to achieve those goals. That's always wild. Someone had a walking boot on just now and had one of those little scooters just going up the hallway. Those things always can't imagine having to use one. They just seem so clunky and awkward. And I've been in a walking boot before. That's not fun. So elevator pitch, what that's all about. The name of the term really describes it. You could pitch this business during an elevator ride. It's a quick, effective description of the business idea, how it's to be achieved, You could tell this on a typical elevator ride, which is about a minute or less. And in about a minute or less, you could hopefully speak about 150 words or less. And it's actually broken down in the book. This is table 5.3 from the top of page 69. Sorry for the horrible neon green, but that's the way the ebook presents the tables. So what you describe in the elevator pitch, about how many words it should take you to describe that, and about how many seconds. So the whole business idea should be able to be laid out at 150 words in 60 seconds. That is something you would have to practice over and over and over again to get just perfected. So this is probably for somebody who's looking to, attract investors. And you're taking your investor to like a dinner somewhere. You've got a few minutes in the elevator, or you see someone in an elevator, hey, I'd like to talk to that person. This is the only time I have their ear, then it's worth a shot. The worst thing they can do is say no. So after the elevator pitch, the business description, and that business description should be able to answer about any question that the reader has, regardless of who the reader is. The reader could be a potential investor, could be a potential lender, could be, a potential customer even. So answers the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the business. And that business description has 3 subsections. So the business background, the product or service that's being offered, and the market to which that product or service is being offered. We're going into each one specifically. The background of the business, how'd you get the idea, when did it start, who has the idea, what's their interest, what's their backgrounds. How would this product fit into current industry trends? Is it antiquated? Is it not? Is it something that's pretty neat, new and exciting? Or, like I said, is this kind of an idea that's had its time and now it's time to go? What is the business type? You have a retail business, service. Are you going to be manufacturing a product or selling wholesale? What's your legal form of business? Sole proprietorship, do you have a limited liability company? Corporation, if it's corporation, is it a C, a regular corporation, or a subchapter S? NPO is not-for-profit organization or partnership. That's basically the types of entities that you can have. And where are you going to be located, if anywhere? Or consultant, they're virtual. They're located at your place of business. So location information, if you do have a physical location, what kind of location strategy do you have? Are you going to build facilities, renovate facilities? And, feel free to include any diagrams or pictures of, for example, the Bleeding and Clotting Disorders Institute that was once just off of Route 6. Seemed like every location they got here in Peoria, they kept outgrowing it. So they were in a small location on Sheridan, outgrew that, went to a building that was out by the Kroger on Lindbergh near Route 6, outgrowing that, just bought the old Mid-State College location. And they're renovating that right now. Tore 2 of the buildings down and The third building is being renovated for them, and they have plenty of room for expansion. So in their business plan revamped, they may, include some diagrams of what their buildings are going to look like, their facilities. If they're going to expand, where will they expand to, and what might that look like? So another part of the business description, your product or your service, excuse me, as detailed as possible. What is your product? What is your service? And what kind of market are you looking for, and what makes that product or service unique? If you have a product, you might include drawings or photos of that product. Relay a little bit about the history of the idea. There's a gentleman in Chillicothe that has a business called Flexi Snake. And it was actually born out of an idea he had from his wife and his daughter constantly clogging the shower drains with their hair. And he designed this device that you can actually snake down the drain, and it's like very prickly on the end of it, but it uncoils and runs some water and swirl this device around your drain pipe and pull it up, and you can get hair out of the drain that way before it causes a problem. And so he might have had some drawings and some photos of, maybe one of his prototypes. And he had to do a lot of work to get patents. So there would be details about any, intangible assets that you've had to secure in order to make that product happen. So the history of the idea, any research that was done in developing the product, researching the market, maybe offering prototypes or showing someone a prototype, the pictures. So going on to the market, you want to describe your market as detailed as you possibly can. What kind of demographics does your target market have? You really need to know who your customers are in order to be able to market to them. As your customers, who they are, the marketing plans tend to be born from that. You have the younger generation being targeted as customers. You might tend to market more towards, social media, more web, more, virtual, rather than if you have an older customer base that's not as comfortable with the computer, then you might go to more of a store-based type of marketing approach. Or maybe, phone book. Even people do still advertise in the phone book. Word of mouth for a service is humongous. Word of mouth can make you and it can break you. The services are typically those businesses that do still do some phone book advertising. We used to do a lot more than we do now. I think we're down to one ad, and that's it. And listed in the phone book, and that's all. It is that word of mouth. Word of mouth is a lot cheaper and a lot more effective. And of course, nowadays we have Yelp. We've got Yelp, we've got Google reviews, we have all that kind of information that's readily available, and that helps as well. So marketing, business description. We also define in here how our business is going to secure supplies, identify the competition. How are we going to deal with them? And what if one of your competitors is Amazon? How are you going to take them on? I don't know that I'd want to take them on right now. They're a behemoth. Especially when the drone thing happens, if it ever does. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be a little scary. And how are you going to deal with any market risk? Yeah, this year's been all about market risk for some businesses, especially your indoor dining institutions and bars and gaming parlors. It's been a bad year for them. So some more of the plans that are contained within the basic plan itself, the business plan. And these actually start on the top of 71 and go through all the way to 75. Yes. Financial plans talked about for quite a while. So you have operational plan, management plans, marketing, and financial plans within your master plan. So what the operational plan discusses, conveys to the reader, is how this company is going to produce its product or offer its service in both an effective and an efficient manner. So if you're looking at a product, you might discuss such items as how we're going to control our inventory, what kind of shifts are going to be worked by our employees, what kind of equipment are we going to be utilizing, and technology as well. And this would be where to present the organizational chart, at least for our non-management employees. When we discuss management, then we would put the organizational chart for, your management. So your management, who's going to be your managers? So it's good to present the names of your managers right here. The plan we'll look at in just a little bit actually not only had the names of the managers, had pictures of them too. So we had names, we had pictures, we had a little bit about their background and the qualifications. How is this entity going to be managed? What kind of management styles do these individuals bring to the table? And if you are employing a support system, what kind of support system are you employing? Do you have an accountant that's not part of your staff, or an attorney, or or a banker that you can bounce ideas off of? You might have human resources personnel that you can talk to as well. Insurance agents, another one. Okay, marketing plan. You want to come up with this is where you probably would either do these two items in-house or employ a consultant to help do this for you. And that is to come up with some sort of marketing analysis and a subsequent strategy. Once you've identified your market, your ideal customer, how are we going to market to this individual? What kind of pricing strategies are we going to have? What kind of distribution strategies, sales, advertising and promotion, public relations? And dare I also say, not included in the book, but what kind of support are we going to offer after the sale? For products or for services as well. Service after the sale can be just as important as the service before and during. If not, I don't want to say more so, but it's equally important anyway. So our marketing plan, we end up finding out who our target market is, and this is top of 72. This is, who's going to ultimately buy our product or buy our service? Who are going to be our main consumers? We want to know who these people are, as much demographic information as we can about the individuals, like an age range, what their typical buying habits are, what kind of expectations do they have? You know, are they looking for low price, or are they looking to pay a little bit more for better quality? And for this product, what kind of growth trends are we looking at? And also for other companies, how they manage to market to this kind of group. Do we use more like social media type of marketing, or is it going to be more of a print advertising, television, radio, etc.? What's the most effective way to reach these individuals? We have to know about a competition as well, exactly who they are, how significant are they in terms of the market. If you can happen to find about how much of a market share competition has, then it's a good thing to know. What kind of products does the competition offer? And what are their pricing strategies too? It's good to know. What strengths did the competition bring? What weaknesses does competition bring? And what strategies do they employ? And how can we possibly get part of their market share? So we have to come up with a pricing strategy. And that pricing strategy is going to be the plan for how much we'll charge customers for our product or services. You know, for services, generally, you're looking at like an hourly billing rate, some sort of a product of the cost of the business. It's usually some sort of a multiplier of that. Company expenses divided by like the average number of work hours for the year, also divided by the number of individuals performing work, times some kind of a multiplier. So that pricing strategy is going to be dependent upon a number of factors. Things such as, you know, what kind of costs do we have to cover, our cost structure? You know, what kind of value does this product have? And what kind of prices do our competitors charge? You don't want to try to compete with other firms, but yet charge an arm and a leg more than they do. That's the best way of getting out of the competition. So they did mention that, so a marketing plan, what it's going to cover is basically the marketing mix. And that's from marketing, what was that, 347? Was that the undergrad marketing class? I think it's 347. It's been a while. Anyway, I'm sure your undergraduate marketing class would have covered this. And the 4 P's of a marketing mix are product, price, place, and promotion. So those 4 P's need to be touched upon in your marketing plan to at least some extent. Excuse me. So the financial plan is, the book likes to say that most investors and lenders put more emphasis on the financial plan than just about anything. Because as we saw last week, a discussion of the cash flow statement, that basically cash is the lifeblood of an organization, and we need to make sure that this company to be is going to generate enough cash to survive and enough cash to repay loans, and the investors are going to say, hey, can I get my investment back? Plus, what kind of dividend potential do I have? Or, stock growth. So we do want to also show those individuals this business's full potential in terms of economic viability. What kind of profit can we turn? What kind of cash flow are we expecting? And again, I reiterated it here, and the book did not. But this in the financial plan is where I would disclose the method of financial reporting and define it. I would tell the user we are using the accrual basis of accounting, and this is what the accrual basis of accounting is. For those who don't know, you may have investors who have no idea how accrual is different than cash accounting. Excuse me. So I think it's important to put that in there. So financial plan, what it should include is usually about 3 years. 3 years of projected. This is actually, again, what we're getting into next week in Chapter 9, where we discuss pro forma statements. Pro forma just basically means projected. So projected income statements, projected statements cash flow, projected balance sheets. We also want to offer some ratio analysis. And the 3 that are mentioned are the debt to equity ratio, the working capital, and inventory turnover. And break-even analysis, we want to present a discussion, a break-even analysis, and our projected figures, or how many units of sales do we think it's going to take for us to neither show a profit nor a loss. Or if you're looking at service, how many service hours would it take to have a net profit of 0? And then in terms of startup cost, how much money has it taken to start our business up so far? And how much are we looking as a projection to have that startup cost be? And that would be things such as, your initial marketing materials, maybe having another person that's good to have in your corner. In my opinion, not only a web developer, but a graphic designer to help you design a logo, help you come up with marketing materials and things like that. I've heard of people that are able to design their logos on, something like Word, but might as well employ the services of somebody who has more powerful tools and might have more of an artistic eye. I know I definitely do not have that. My brother's artistic, and he took all the art talent out of the gene pool before I got there. Okay, so our startup cost budget, our initial marketing materials, our fees for our applications. There's initial fees for things such as incorporation or to set up an LLC with the state of Illinois. They're minimal, at least in the grand scheme of things. But initial stock offering too can come with a cost, even if it's not on a public exchange at all. Printing up stock certificates, things like that. your startup costs, you might have had to rent a space and pay a security deposit, pay utility deposits, and all that kind of stuff. So those kind of items would be disclosed in the financial plan area. So you have a lot going on in that financial plan. They do mention in the book that some of the considerations of the financial plan, be realistic with your estimations and projections, and don't try to shoot too high. Yeah, being overly optimistic or overstating, yeah, you're going to lose confidence real fast if the actual figures come in and they're way under your projections. You might start to lose investors, and your lenders might get a little concerned too. So best to shoot low. Like I said, shoot low and hope for higher. So another thing that's mentioned is don't put too much information in. They said don't present too much in terms of tables and calculations that aren't necessary, just to make it look impressive. That's kind of the whole keep it simple idea. They're just going to confuse everybody if you put too much calculations. That's why the ratios that were presented was only 3. You don't want to present every single financial ratio that can possibly be calculated. Let the user do that if they want to. Just give them the basics. So also, you want some sort of a discussion about the assumptions on which the estimations are being made. We're assuming sales of 180,000 units because our market research has told us that that is what's possible in this area. So they also do mention to include those assumptions and the explanations on the final page of the financial statement as endnotes. So put some sort of discussion in there as to how those estimates were derived. And pro forma statements should be about 3 years ahead. And the first year, generally, you present those on a monthly basis, and the years after on a quarterly basis. Important to recognize that in the early years of a business, you might not make a profit. And hopefully that does not scare your investors away, because typically businesses do lose money the first several years. I think Tesla is now just starting to crack a profit. They've had a lot of years of losses. SpaceX, I don't know that they've ever cracked a profit, probably not. But yeah, I believe Amazon getting started, they didn't crack profits very often. I think it was just in the last few years. You used to see profit, the PE ratio, price earnings, as being not able to be calculated because they didn't have any earnings. Now you start to see that in there, that there is a positive number being presented. And now their stock is what, 3,000 or so a share? I haven't checked today. The market was up big time, so I didn't see what it was today. And last time the market was up like 700 or 800 points. It was like over 1,000 at the beginning of the day. So in your appendix, after all the information from the plan has been presented, things that can be included, but don't have to be, but not a bad idea. It's never a bad idea to present more of the information than what's needed to a point. So, yeah, feel free to put the resume of the entrepreneur or any key individuals. Any tax returns for the 3 years or so. If you got a new venture, you're not going to have those. You know, business registration license, so you can say, hey, this is a legitimate business. Information given on any loan applications. You can see that the investor can see what you're reporting to the banks as being your potential and whether or not that matches up to what your business plan says. Do you have any contracts or lease agreements? And what are those for and how much and how long? Doesn't hurt to have them. If you've got facilities being constructed, maybe including floor plans, pictures, maybe artist rendering of your future headquarters, any blueprints could be included, and then any research that was utilized in coming up with the contents of the plan, and also be presented. And I'm going to show you here. It's a good time to do this. And where is it? Oh, I think I've got it right in here. And that is the sample business plan that I found through a Google search today. And it's a PDF document. Oh, for Pete's sake. What do we want in here? Oh, come on. There it is. And it was this, and I will put this up on our site as well. So it's a company called Kulina, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was based out of San Francisco. And it was supposed to be smart technology that was kitchen-based. So the idea behind this company and behind their products were that they had like a smart plug for one. Oh, we've got somebody coming in. And so one thing they had was a smart plug that could be accessed via a web app, like a smartphone app. And you could plug something into it, like, let's say, a crock pot. And you're driving home on the way from work, and okay, I'm going to turn my crock pot on. So you go to your phone, you pull up your Kulina app, and somehow you have your plugs listed. You're probably able to label them by name. You know, select which one your crock pot is on and turn it on remotely. So somehow that plug would communicate through the Wi-Fi in your home, and your smartphone would also send that communication to the plug to turn it on. Or you're driving to work and you realize, oh crud, I left the stove on. So you could remotely turn the stove off. So that's the basic idea of what this company had come up with. Apparently didn't work because doing a search for them online, I see absolutely nothing. I typed in their web address and got nothing. So it didn't happen. Yeah, kulinatech.com doesn't take you anywhere. Can't reach the page. So it is not a viable link anymore. So they had a pretty good business plan, and actually kind of a very polished looking business plan as well. So they had, their table of contents. They decided to skip, at least in this presentation, the confidentiality statement. But they had the executive summary, the company overview, and actually say what page the different items appear on, their industry overview, their financial statements. So it just kept going on. They had a little bit of a synopsis, the fast facts. When the company started, who started it, where is it headquartered, and what audience are they targeting? And there was a little bit of I'm going to zoom this in here. Excuse me. A little quick description. So San Francisco-based IoT, what was that? Internet of Things is what that stood for. I had to look it up. I was like, what is an IoT? Internet of Things. So use a lot. It's home automation. So they have an advanced smart hub technology that enables users to monitor cooking devices and kitchen appliances through the platform, which the platform was going to be a smartphone app. So then they have their mission statement here as well. Showed what their vision was. Their vision statement was here. They decided they wanted to become the leading provider of the technology for kitchen appliances. Sadly, it didn't work out for them. They had a nice product, though. They're gonna give them kudos. Their plan was nice. So they had their executive summary and kind of what the company, what is it all about, what has the team done. At this point, they were bold about putting that we are currently seeking $15 million Series B share capital investment in bold letters. Basically, we want your money. And we're not shy about saying it. So the team had finished product development. They had 3 prototypes completed. They were ready to start mass manufacturing. They apparently had some pre-ordered units sold. And they already had capital secured, but they needed more in order to really get going. What do they need the money for? They need more hardware manufacturing. They wanted to improve the software that was being used in their entity and be able to fulfill those 10,000 pre-ordered units. So they need money to get rolling. So we're looking for $15 million. Where's this $15 million going to go? That's what the funding allocation shows. Pretty much almost an even split between your manufacturing, sales and marketing, hiring individuals, and operations. So they talked about their executive team. This is the one that had not only the names and information, but they had pictures, which was kind of a neat. That was a neat step, I thought. I gave it a personal touch. Very young company. Looking at these people, holy cow, young companies. The founder and CEO already did a tech-based startup that was doing $100 million in revenue. He looks like a baby. Like, oh my gosh. Might have to do a Google search on Kent McClure and see what he's doing nowadays. Well, he was the founder and CEO. They have the chief operating officer, Harvard MBA. The chief technology officer, Stanford University. Pretty impressive. Chief financial officer, financial management from NYU. Pretty good. He worked for 7 years as CFO for a company in Silicon Valley. So basically, they're telling their users, we got some qualified and pretty talented people on our staff. And that should kind of help some of the buying jitters along. Excuse me. So, company overview. They said exactly, for businesses alone, contain about 12 to 20% of energy supply. And they go into a discussion about residential, excuse me. The font colors used here are a little bit unfortunate. Got a lot of light blues that don't project too well. So your kitchen appliances tend to use a little bit of juice. Dishwashers, coffee makers, toasters, things like TVs, washing machines. These are all things that could be controlled, turned on and off when nobody's at home through this technology that was being offered from this Kalina company. So the impact could be a reduction in energy used. And the impact could be, a drop for a consumer in their electricity bill. I think this founder had like a kitchen fire in his home, and that's how he thought of the idea. And there was a little statistics over on the left side there. Some of the background as to how the idea was arrived at. Almost half of your house fires are caused by faulty cooking equipment or leaving something on when nobody's home. 62% of house fires are from stoves. So some of what they planned on doing, key features and benefits of what makes their product unique. And they actually did go into here too. You were able to, through their app, get notifications. So if you had left your stove on, and you've got that stove plugged into this monitoring device, you drive off to work, you get an alert on your phone, says, hey, this is on, would you like me to shut it off? Yes, please. And then anytime regular maintenance is required too. You've got a stove that's maybe something's malfunctioning in the heating element. Somehow this device is able to monitor that. So they do mention that there was a Google Nest at that time. And this was something called the Lowe's Iris. I've never heard of that. I don't think Alexa had come out yet. So you could also use it with your smart speakers in your house. So they do mention, what's the product going to cost? $149. Profit margins approximately 40%. How are we going to sell the product? E-commerce and website to start, brick and mortar after that. including in places like Lowe's, Best Buy, Home Depot, other big box stores. Sometimes it takes a little work to get into Walmart. And they had some net revenue projections, which sadly those did not happen. But they were looking for, this was the pre-sales were $500 or $500,000. In 2018, they were looking to triple that. 2019, they were looking to almost triple 2018's, and so on and so forth. By 2021, hopefully that company would be generating sales revenue of almost just a little over $19 million. So that was their projections. What kind of company milestones are we looking for? We're looking to have our first generation products to the customers. Then we can have customers doing, reviewing those. We have investors. They had angel investors. The owners put up capital, friends and family. The proprietary technology, they got a provisional patent for that. And strategic partnerships, they were working on those. Have they been in the press? There's been some mention in the Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, Wired magazine, things like that. And what kind of manufacturing were they looking at? Capacity of 50,000 units a month as they go up. So they did have a company timeline from the founding to present, and present was 2017 when this was written. I don't think they lasted much beyond 2017. I'm looking at, I tried to look at the California, did like a corporation LLC search, California. They might have not, the corporation name could have been different as well. But at least there was mention of a Kulina, and it had been involuntarily dissolved. I think it was 2018 or so. I don't think they got too far. So future development, looking to launch our products. It's going to be the start with more to follow. They're wanting to maybe get into commercial kitchen equipment also. And they're talking about, second generation product that had potential to have some energy saving features. So that was on the horizon. So I talked a little bit about industry analysis and the IoT, the Internet of Things market, and where it was heading. Thriving industry, looking to have quite a bit of growth by 2020. And so I was looking like to be about a 300% increase from where everything was in 2017. A pretty healthy increase in 3 years. So estimation was that we'd have about 8 billion connected devices installed globally by 17. Things like Alexas and things like that. Excuse me. So they say, hey, this is the perfect time. We're getting positioned now before the growth really happens. So we want to get established now. This would be a good time to jump in with an investment. So target audience, who are they looking to target? They have their homeowners, maybe residential property managers as well, and insurance companies. Trying to get insurance companies to recommend their products to their policyholders, especially those that might have had fires. Why would insurance companies even care? They would rather not pay out premium. They'd rather not pay anything out on insurance policies if they don't have to. Excuse me. So they might offer, policy discounts to individuals who had these types of appliance hubs in their kitchens. Do you have a smart hub in your kitchen? If so, your homeowner's insurance might qualify for a discount. Might get me to buy one. Homeowners insurance can be expensive. So how did they decide to market? They laid out their marketing plan here. A lot of social media was being utilized. We're also launching an initiative to write articles to like tech journals about the product. And they had a blog. So these were some of the products that they were looking to release, not only the smart hub, but appliances themselves. So they get into their competitors, who they are, what are their key weaknesses, and what are their strengths. So yeah, there's the Nest. We have the Nest thermostats now. I've had those for a while. I would like to get them. That you can drive away. Oh shoot, I forgot to turn my thermostat down. Go into your Nest app and turn your thermostat down in your house. You can actually program it too through a smartphone app. Turn the heat on to 70 degrees at 6 a.m. Shut it down overnight. Save energy that way. So basically what Nest was doing. What is their thermostat cost and where is it failing? Companies underperformed in sales and fallen expectations that they set themselves. So Amazon, they had the Amazon Echo. So that was your speaker. They could work with. So there was Alexa then. Wasn't sure. So sound quality wasn't that great. Limited skill capability, and there was a language barrier. There was a company called Wallflower that had a smart plug, which was going to be similar to what this had. This Wallflower Labs, it was entirely based on stove usage, nothing else. So they show how their product stacks up against the competitors. Can they work together? Can they connect to multiple kitchen devices? The only one that could was Kulina's. Was it user-friendly? They all were. So basically, they were a little bit higher than the Amazon Echo, but did more. So what makes their product different? They go through that. And what was the investment opportunity? Why invest? And then the financials came later, but that part wasn't presented here. So that's actually a pretty good business plan minus the projected financials. I will put that up on our site. And some of the other elements you might want to put into a plan might include a milestone chart, and wasn't a good one, wasn't even one given in the book whatsoever. But they said you could present that chart in a manner similar to what's called a Gantt chart. And Google search of a Gantt chart gave this. And it was actually keyed to a business plan, which bonus. So that showed, the time span, the time actually was broken down into weeks. Monday through Sunday. And this was going to be our startup time, about 9 days. Evaluating the business is going to be about a 3-day process. So you could present something like this in with your business plan as well. And I actually came off of a website that was just Gantt.com. So it shows activities in a visual format. When each one starts, when it ends, what activities overlap. So SWOT analysis also could be presented of a project. Here's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Just like the top of 77. So basically, you're looking at a plan, an idea, and coming up with those things. We're looking at, an idea of a business. What strengths does this business have? Maybe in terms of competition. What potential weaknesses are there in starting this business? What kind of opportunities can arise and what kind of threats can arise? So, example of a SWOT analysis. This did not translate too well to the screen because it was just so little. But on 77, back in the olden days, we used to just take a piece of paper, divide it into quadrants, and write our strengths in one quadrant, weaknesses in another, opportunities in another, threats in another. This is more of a list-based approach, which is probably better, honestly. You could take just about any kind of business, list out what are the positives. And the assignment, the project is assuming that you're going to build in Peoria a 20-screen movie theater, water park, and entertainment complex out by Walmart. Project's about $20 million. Before you proceed, you want to do a SWOT analysis on it. What kind of strengths are there to presenting something like that? Do we have anything like that around? Not really. Weaknesses? Is there enough of a market? Do we have any opportunities? Do we have any threats? What kind of competition is nearby? Do we have a saturated market? Do we have, how weather, things like that. So other elements of the plan are, you can list critical risks that could be inherent in the business. And this, you gotta be kind of careful doing this in a business plan, because if you come up with too many critical risks, things that can go wrong, you lose your investor. Because they go, well, I don't want to do this. So it is optional. And the reason why is it can create a gloomy undertone. And that gloomy undertone is per the book. So what can go wrong? How does management plan on dealing with any problems? Excuse me. And talking about measurements of control as well. What kind of standard of performance are you going to adopt in the company? How are you going to follow results? And how are you going to correct any problems that arise there? So things like your, how many units are you going to produce? What if you fall short? How are you going to correct that? You know, new equipment, more employees, what? So I basically try to cover all the bases in this plan. Succession, that's huge. So what happens if your owners, especially you got something like what's going on right now? Who saw this happening? What if your owners suddenly become ill? What if they die? What if they're permanently disabled? We're not able to function in the end of the operations. Who's going to take over? Do you have a structure where somebody can take over? Or do you have like a sole proprietorship that'll have to be basically dissolved and someone else step in a new business? Sadly, my dad did not have this. We didn't have a succession plan. Wasn't expecting to go so suddenly. So basically, I had just come up with one in my head based off of conversations I'd had with them. And thankfully, we had an entity where we did not need to start a new entity. If you have a corporation, corporations have indefinite life. Death of the owner does not mean end of the business. You just have a new owner. So environmental impact, you might want to address that as well. If your company wishes to employ any green processes in the manufacturing, maybe recycle materials, or do you have a process that has hazardous waste as a result? And if so, how do you get rid of it? Because you're going to have EPA regulations to address and potential Superfund issues if they're not addressed properly. Excuse me. So reviewing the plan, there's basically a checklist on 80 to 81 that breaks down the elements of the plan and has 4 columns presented next to each one. That, you know, is that item present? If it's not, does it need to be present? Or does it not need to be present? And also, if that item is present, does it need to be revised? So you go down the list and oh crud, I forgot to put my executive summary in here, since that's the last thing you're supposed to do. Oh no, I need to do that. So you want to do a review before you finally submit the plan, because you could be missing something. And also, do you have something that you're presenting that, looking at it now, you think, I don't want to put that in there? Such as a discussion of, you know, potential problems that maybe the list became too long and just put a nasty taste to the document. So maybe I want to pull it out of there. And more things to consider in the revision of your plan. This is covered on 79. The organization of the plan itself, and does it flow well? You want to make sure that it does have somewhat of a flow to it. You want to communicate what needs to be communicated without being too wordy. That's where I run into problems myself. I would try to write like penalty abatement letters. And I would print it, drop it off on my dad's desk and ask him what he thinks of it. And he's like, you're saying way too much here. Just cut down the wording. So if you got too much wording going on, try to condense it as much as possible. So is it clear and concise? Your estimation methods being used, are they accurate and not too overly optimistic? And is the plan consistent? You're not contradicting yourself anywhere within the plan. Because somebody will find that. Okay. So skipped 5.5. In favor of talking about financing the plan. And this is where we get into the question of debt versus equity. Do we want to go with debt financing, equity, or both? If debt is taken on, what kind of debt? If equity is taken on, what kind of equity? You want to actually plan, especially with the equity. You want to come up with a plan with that before you even register your business. Because you need to tell, with Illinois, the Secretary of State, how many shares do you want to authorize? So if debt, what kind of debt? Are we looking at bank loans, small business administration loans? Each one has their own documentation requirements. So you might want to familiarize with what those are. And possibly a third option that you don't see a whole lot covered in the city and TIF loans. Cities will loan money to businesses. And there is such a thing called a tax increment financing district that many cities have. Even the small little city of Chillicothe used to have 2, now they have 1. The thing where assessments of properties within a district are frozen, and the increase in value, the additional taxes that come from that go into this TIF loan, this TIF fund it's called, that's controlled by the city and basically used for like property revitalization, infrastructure, and granting loans and giving grants to incoming businesses and existing businesses. So cities are a good place to look for financing because you can get good rates. But you do have to prepare for potential city council meetings, going, or finance committee meetings, presenting your plan before them. I know the city of Chillicothe, they offer economic development loans in the city and TIF loans. And they also have TIF incentives. And they also have things like, what do they call it? A facade grant, where you can apply to, if you're going to do like a project to the outside of the building, you can apply to get so much of it refunded to you by the city. Their thought is they'll make up for that in future increases in property taxes. Your assessments will probably increase. Excuse me. So if you're using equity to finance your business, even partially, what type? Are you looking at common stock or preferred stock? For each one, you'll need to at least have locked down how many shares you want to authorize. And this is where something like an LLC, you can't do a corporation with an LLC. that's going to offer preferred stock. You would have to do business as a C corporation. S corporations only allow one class of stock, and that's common. The common stock, how many shares do you want to authorize? How many shares to issue? Rough estimate of what the price is going to be per share. What kind of dividend rates do you want to disclose per share? Common stock, they're expressed as a dollar amount per share. On preferred stock, the generally dividend rates are generally expressed as a percentage. I might say that it's a 2% preferred stock. So plan presentation. Everything is covered. We already covered venture capitalists and angel investors a few chapters back. So presenting the plan. Sad statistic here. Only about 10% of submitted plans are invited for a formal presentation. If it's a bank, you might not have to. Might be the reason why. But if you're submitting a business plan to something like a city council, you better believe they're going to invite you to a finance committee meeting. So you need to be prepared. Generally, they'll give you about 20 minutes to present your plan. And what items do you need to present? Basically the 5 that are talked about in the text on 85. And I mentioned on that page and on the top of 86, what kind of information you should talk about in that presentation. So longer than your elevator pitch by 20 times. So a little bit of an introduction, of yourself. I'm CEO of X company, and this is what I'm offering in my business. So you introduce yourself, introduce the company. Maybe you'll specify what kind of location you're going to be working from, if there is one. What's the product being offered, and if you're giving a live presentation, perfect time to bring a prototype if you have one. What the market is you're looking to target. Present just basic overviews of your functional plans, the operational, the management, the marketing, and financial. You do want to spend most of your time on 3. And that's your plans. That's pretty much the meat and taters of the whole shooting match. Any other information you might have used in developing your plan? If you did SWOT analysis, you have environmental factors, succession plans, things like that you want to present those, and then come up with a conclusion. And some of the tips that are given on the bottom of 85. Rehearse this little baby ahead of time, and preferably in front of a mocked audience. So you want to be well performed. You want to show, know your stuff, definitely, before you present. You want to be enthusiastic, but not overly emotional. And if you get any questions, you want to answer them as happily as possible and not be bothered by them, I guess. Not, what now? I've been guilty of that at work sometimes. So you want to make your audience feel comfortable to the idea. Prototype is a good idea if you're going to give a live presentation. Bring your product. Let them see it. Let them touch it. let them maybe, you know, kind of just play with it a little bit. So be succinct as possible. Try not to make it overly technical. Start talking, you know, things like electrical engineering that can go over people's heads real quick, especially mine. People start talking circuits and that kind of stuff and you lose me. I don't know any of that. So yeah, visual aids, put them in at the right time. If you want people to pay attention, that's not the time to pass around your prototype. Because they're going to be more interested in that than what you're saying. And you don't want too much visuals going around. Don't want it turning into a Cirque du Soleil kind of presentation. Don't go over time is a big one. And you shouldn't just present and leave, but you know, follow up. That's where they say the whole kind of like things you do in an interview where you send like a thank you note and that kind of stuff. And that's definitely a good thing to do in something like a business plan presentation, is to thank people for their time. So you want to update your plan often. After you've gotten your financing, that's not the end of it. You don't say, okay, I can just throw this in a corner with, you know, my old bank statements and never have to touch that again. No. You want to update it at least once a year. And the reason being, you know, keep mind of those milestones that you may have laid out in the plan. Those are a reminder to stay on schedule. You've also got maybe goals that were listed in the plan. Make sure we're being mindful of our goals, meeting those, and maybe even exceeding those. And if not, we need to adjust the estimate to something realistic. So for the written text itself, some suggestions from the book. These are 87, and they talk about a PowerPoint presentation at 87, 88. So for written text, I'm going to print out a plan. I say a good quality light colored paper. So you don't want to print this on like a dark green, copy paper. Black text on the dark green paper, you do not see it well. So the book even said to go for white paper. I said, light color. You could get away with using a beige, I think. Or a light gray even. So 1 to 1.5 inch margins. Don't go crazy with the font. Just something normal. Something like Times New Roman, Arial, Courier, Calibri. You know, a normal looking font. One thing they say to not do is to duplex. So each page should be front only. I can tell you why that is. Especially if you're printing on an inkjet printer, you can have bleed through. And that bleed through could get on the other side of your paper and mess up your wording there. And even printing on a laser printer, sometimes pages can stick together if they're duplex. And another thing to consider there, in my opinion, your audience might want to take notes on the back of the paper. They give them the back of the paper to do so. So, spell check. I repeated that a few times. The spell check is very important, F7. Spelling and grammar check. Proper capitalization too. Oh, please, 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 please. Proper capitalization, proper punctuation. Knowing the difference between there, and there. Also, that's where spell check will help you, spelling and grammar check. So, bulleted points are good to use too. You tend to not get as wordy when you're dealing with a bulleted list than in a narrative form. So things to avoid in written text, weird colored paper. So don't really want to present a business plan on neon green paper. It's loud. It's obnoxious. It can trigger headaches. And you can lose people right off the bat, just from that first impression. The book didn't mention this, but paper with watermarks can do the same thing. Our chosen paper for audit reports, my dad always had, was a paper that had a stinking watermark on it. I hated that paper for that reason. When we were finally not able to get it anymore, I was never so relieved in my life. Because you're reading something and you're seeing that watermark from the back of the page and it just distracts you. So watermarks, pattern on the paper, it's a no-go. Just keep it a flat color, normal color. Yeah, no odd fonts. And no big fonts or little. So things like your Comic Sans, which might be kind of cute and playful, but not for a business presentation. Comic Sans, Edwardian script, things like that. It might be fun, but yeah, not for this purpose. Keep it simple. You can tell I copied and pasted this slide because I kept the size 12 up. I meant to say bigger than size 12 or smaller. You don't want to make font too small, just in case you have older people that maybe cannot see too well. You use a size 8 font, you're going to lose people. You use a size 16 or so, that might also lose people. So, want to avoid duplexing, long-winded text, slapping a graph right in the middle of a paragraph. Ugh, not a good idea. Keep your images out of the text. And you want to keep your text black and white, nothing. That's where that other business plan kind of deviated from this because they had that light blue font that just didn't work too well. But then when it comes to the presentation, some of the suggestions offered by the textbook authors, it has suggestions and things to not do. 40 words a slide max is what is recommended. The titles to basically go no bigger than 32-point font, and the text at 22 or around there, and to go with some sort of regular font. Nothing again like Broadway font or brush script font or any of the real oddballs that are out there. So things like, Arial and Gill Sans and Calibri and Courier and just kind of basically like your true type fonts, as they're called. So if you're going to have a PowerPoint presentation, you want to keep all the slides looking similar. If this were my business plan, I wouldn't want to jump to my next slide and it's a totally different pattern and totally different color scheme. But you want to keep the presentation consistent. So stick to a theme, stick to a color scheme. For a business presentation, they say a dark background with white text is better. And once again, spell check is your friend. And proper capitalization was also mentioned in the book. Proper capitalization, proper grammar. And last item here are things to avoid, such as, we mentioned our weird fonts about 3 times. Being overly wordy, especially with the presentation. Slap a slide up and it has 100 words on it. Gonna lose people. You don't want to have all your words flying in and a star wipe and your animation, your graphics, things like that. Sparingly, I don't use any. It's a fun little tool to play with, but after a while, you just don't want to play with it anymore. So no bright colors, no bright colored fonts, in fonts or in the background. You want to keep it kind of neutral toned as much as possible. And that's the material. That takes us to the topic of our research paper for next week, and that has to do with the succession plan. I think that was the next item in the handouts after the skeleton of the business plan was the info about the mini research paper. This is also the Word document that's out on Sakai. So basically, we just discuss what a succession plan is, why is it necessary. Maybe if you find an example of places where there was not a succession plan, where a business went awry because of that. Might be a good thing to include. So text can be used as one source, one additional source. We'll use Turnitin. The Dropbox is out. And in our week 11 folder, it's our first Dropbox right here. And the instructions appear here again. And the due date is start of class next time, which is November 16th. I had to do a double take there. Like, is it really? Yeah, it is. And, okay, so that's that. And the next item is the project, which is also the information given and the Dropbox right after the paper. So our directions are that you decide, you come up with a business idea. We don't have enough movie screens in Peoria, apparently. So, hey, we're going to put up a 20-screen movie theater. If anyone's familiar with Fun City. Something like Fun City, too, attached to it. 20-screen movie theater, water park, entertainment complex where you can drive go-karts, you can throw axes, do stuff like that. We're going to put that on a vacant big parcel of land out in basically the industry park. We're looking about 20 million bucks. We had this idea, and now I want to come up with a SWOT analysis that comes up with what are going to be the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with going forward with the project. So, think about things like competition, What kind of competition do we have? Is this something unique to Peoria? Could it potentially bring in, people go to Fun City just to go to that water park? Could that be something like that in Peoria happen? Could that be a strength? Could that be an opportunity? So page 77 of the book would be your basic template. So you'd basically have just 4 columns with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and just list items in each category. And you're definitely not going to have an even number on each. Usually when I was doing it like in a quadrant approach, I would almost always have one quadrant that was almost empty, that I had a hard time coming up with. It was usually threats for me. Okay, so where we're going next time, our final in-person session. We go remote after that. And that's the last time we'll have number-phobic presentations for 2 weeks, because the week of Thanksgiving I don't do any, because y'all probably traveling. So I kept that in mind when I wrote the syllabus. So we've got 2 number-phobic presentations, chapters 8, chapter 9. So we'll give chapter 5 another glance. We got 2 things to submit for next week, 2 number-phobic presentations to start the class off, and then we'll go into chapter 9, and we'll talk about doing pro forma statements, which are basically budgeted financial statements, budgeted or projected financial statements. And that chapter goes way more in depth than what we need to. They go for kind of a statistical approach towards the end of it. We don't need to get that carried away with it by any means. I'll probably be bringing maybe a little bit of information that might be outside of the text that supplement. So, any questions on anything? So we'll see you next time then, and I believe it's going to be our last in-person session. Holy cow, it's gone fast. This is going fast. Probably get
a year.
it has. It totally has.